Hey everyone, and welcome to the Creative Financing Podcast. I'm Nicole Kamanjian. I'm here with Cody Richard and the host of this show, Jeff Rappaport. This is episode 221, and today we're going to do part 3 of continuing to talk about deals that we're currently working on. This episode is going to be about commercial deals. So while listening to this episode, if you guys have questions, please head over to the Creative Financing Podcast Facebook group. If you're not part of that community, just search the Creative Financing Podcast in Facebook and ask to join. We're going to have live sessions on the second Thursday of every month. So please bring your questions. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can ask your questions in the comments below. If you get value from this episode, please like, share, and subscribe to the show. We also want your feedback, so please rate and review wherever you listen.
All right, so hopefully you guys, your heads aren't spinning so much from the last episode, and I apologize, but it's something that I'm working on, and I thought that you guys and as well as our listeners would find at least interesting. So hopefully I didn't confuse you too much. So today what we're going to talk about is how I'm using some different owner finance on some deals that we're dealing with that are commercial. And so let's look at one right off the bat. And Cody, I want you to look at this real quick. Just look at this section right here, the bold. You can see that, right?
Yeah, if you could zoom in a little bit, it may help.
This is a storage unit facility. And there you go. Is that better?
Yeah, that works.
Okay. But I want you to tell me, as far as the terms go, what sticks out to you?
The actual timeline, it's a little open-ended right now. It's the first thing that popped out for me.
So what do you mean? Tell me.
To use the owner finance to acquire quickly and then easily.
Oh, yeah, but the term is 60 months. So that was just my added. What stands out to you, Nicole? Does anything stand out to you based on what the terms are? And let me read it just in case you're listening. So the price says purchase price $1.6 million. Okay, the owner is willing to finance. The down payment is $560,000. The interest rate is 5.5%. The payment would be $5,905 per month, principal and interest, and the term would be 60 months.
That down payment is pretty significant.
There you go. Thank you. So that down
second try is not that bad.
What's that?
Second try is not that bad.
No, not bad at all. So I didn't put together these terms. I have a partner that I am working with on this, and he put together the terms. And so that down payment includes the down payment that he agreed to with the seller, plus it includes an assignment fee. And you are right, that is over 30% down. And normally I would, and that was my first response, was that that's too much, right? But as I started to think about it a little bit, I started to wonder, when would it be okay to get that kind of down payment? And a lot of buyers would say, well, I can go to the bank and get those terms, and they're kind of right. However, is that really what you want to be doing? Because this is not an asset that is performing to its highest level, right? That, it's got a 64% occupancy rate right now. The rents are low. The seller, the owner, is using 25 storage units for his own being. He's using part of that 3/4 of a warehouse that should be bringing in like $1,800, brings in $180. So is this really where you want to go? Do you really want to go to a bank and get financing on it when it's at this point because it's not well performing, right? Banks want to see better performing assets. So
So is the
go ahead.
main issue with going to a bank that they would have a harder time loaning on something like this because it's
Yeah,
poorly?
they're going to have some issues that, yeah, they get it, that you're going to, it would be like going and getting a bank on a rehab, right? There are loans, there are FHA 203k loans that you can get to rehab a property. But if you were to go to a conventional bank and say, look, I'm buying this property at 50% loan to value, but it's a piece of crap, and I got to fix it. Do you think they all want to lend you the money?
Yeah, it
Not
sounds like more risk.
Yeah, not necessarily, right? So, and especially with commercial, they want to see that they'd rather this be more turnkey when they lend you the money, right? So, in this case, that's where I think it's okay to have a bigger down payment. Now, I probably would have worked on this interest rate, and I would have tried to get this down payment down a bit. But the way I look at this is that, one, is raising $560,000 as a down payment easier than raising the full purchase price of 1.6 million? Yeah, I would think it is. Second, the goal really should be, we talk a lot about BRRRR strategy, especially in more residential and small multifamily, but in commercial, that's what it's all about, is BRRRR strategy, right? Being able to raise rents, increase occupancy, deal with deferred maintenance, get rid of bad property managers, and increase the value, and then refinance and pay off your investors or pay off your bridge financing or whatever, and hopefully own the property without any money in it, right? That's pretty popular strategy. Well, in this case, that's exactly what you're doing, right? You're putting in 560,000. You now own this property. Yes, I know it's probably on a little bit on the high side, but now you control it. Yeah, you don't have to go qualify for any loans. Bridge financing is going to be 8 or 9%. Hard money is going to be 12% plus. So all of these are better options than actually going and getting loans. And the goal really is that was the point of this paragraph for 12 to 18 months, is that go fix the problems over the course of the first 6 to 12 months. And then banks usually want to see 6 to 12 more months of seasoning. Now let's say in 2 years, you can go refinance and get all of this money back. So I started thinking about this myself because I didn't like it. But as I looked into it more, I realized that it's really not that bad, and wouldn't be the way I'd like to structure all my deals. But if you're looking at a value add opportunity, maybe the down payment being on the high side isn't necessarily the issue. Even the interest rate, which I'm not super fond of, but I already know, if you went to a bridge financer, you're going to pay almost for sure 8-9%. And if you go hard money, it's going to be a minimum 10% and more like 12+% end points. So in reality, this isn't as bad as it looks. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I know this isn't the topic that we're covering. I have a question about the down payment. So I know you've been doing this a long, long time. I'm sure you have plenty of connections, can raise that money for the down payment if needed.
Yeah.
If you're someone that's newer into creative financing or real estate in general, how would you suggest starting to get that money raised?
If you wanted to buy this for yourself?
Yeah.
So you could look at it in a couple of different ways. Okay. So one would be, you could look to create a fund and syndicate it, right? Where you've got to look at, you got to follow all the rules because now you're under SEC guidelines. Okay, I'm not a huge fan of doing that. Certainly, you can do things and you can buy much bigger properties by doing that, but that's certainly one option. Another option is to bring in a lender or a lender slash part owner. And so I could bring in a partner, right? Could I say, I want to find someone that's got the down payment, and hey, you're bringing in about, let's say, a third of the purchase price, so I'll give you a third of the ownership. Um, Simple as that. Or I could structure it as a loan where I can borrow this and I'll pay, maybe something like 5% interest only. And when I refinance and I pay you back, if there's any cash flow actually before, I'll pay you based on that as well. And after the refinance, I may pay you some of the refinance proceeds, and or I might give you cash flow in perpetuity. So I can structure this in a number of ways. Really, the only thing that you got to know is that, hey, when you start, when you're not securing someone with the collateral and you are, pooling people's money together, you are basically syndicating. And if you don't do that in the right way, now you can get yourself into trouble. So make sure that you do it the right way.
Makes sense.
All right, let's look at one other. And I don't even know if it's worth looking at, but let's talk about it, because I think that this is a good example. And I think, Cody, you will remember this deal. And we won't mention any areas because it's still ongoing, but we are working on a 68 unit apartment building, and it's in a smaller city, very small, but it is constantly full because there is a medical school there, and so they rent to medical students, and they were asking top dollar. Okay, top, not just top, but top dollar. And I didn't think anyone would pay this and cash it out. It just wouldn't make sense. But it's a newer building. It's like 4 years old and it's full. It's 100% occupied. And it pretty much always is 100% occupied. The rents are probably a little bit on the low end and could be raised. So this is basically turnkey, but with a little bit of value add, right? That you can go in and raise rents, let's say $100 each unit, something like that, which makes a big difference when you got 68 units. But if you were to, they were asking over $7 million for the property. And if you go and based on the income, and I don't remember what the income was, but I remember looking at it and just basically, hey, if I put down 20-25%, whatever the going rates were, that, would there be any cash flow? And if there was any, it was almost none. And so I told the broker, the only way we're buying this is if we can create terms. And he went back to his clients and they said they'd be open to it, but they had some contingencies. Okay. And the first contingency was they needed $1 million down payment. And so on a $7 million property, what percentage is $1 million?
About 15, somewhere around there.
Does that work for us?
Can make it work, yeah.
Yeah, it could work, right? Still less than going to a bank, right? Okay. But the problem is that even with creative finance, we got to find a way to, if I just told you that at the going rates, which was 6 months ago from when we're doing this, when rates were significantly less, and I'm telling you that didn't really work. It's certainly not working today, right? When rates have now gone up. And so they have dropped the price, only a couple $100,000, and it doesn't even make a difference. But even when I structured the offers, I put together many offers on this property, many, and we just weren't getting anywhere. And so finally I offered more than what they were asking, and but with principal only payments. And they were like around $20,000 a month, something like that, 19,500. But they didn't want to carry for that long. And I'm like, you got to carry long enough where this upside down property becomes right side up. And so they agreed to, I think it was 5 years, and $20,000 a month. That's almost $1.25 million in principal pay down. So that's the route that we're going. $1 million down, $20,000 a month, principal only payments. And I think I don't remember what exactly we raised the price to, but we raised it maybe $300,000-400,000 from what they were asking, but no interest. Okay. And it was agreed to. They all liked it. Everyone was in, except for their attorney. Does this ring a bell with you, Cody?
Yes, it does.
All right. So the attorney came back and said, okay, you have to charge interest, which this doesn't come up very often, but he's right. At least according to the IRS, he's right. And the IRS doesn't believe in principal only loans. They think that something's wrong if you're not charging some kind of interest. And if you were to be audited, that the IRS could say, well, we're going to put an interest rate to this. It's called imputed interest. It doesn't happen very often, and it comes up even less with sellers. But just so you understand that if you're making all principal only payments and someone says you can't do that, they're right, and you should understand it. So he said, you got to charge interest. And I said, I can charge interest. I've made like 8 other offers with interest, but seller didn't like any of them. So I can tell you, if I offer interest, price comes down, term goes longer, everything changes. And so they decided they were going to go against the attorney's wishes, and they were going to allow no interest. And I said, great, let's sign a contract. The attorney came back for one more issue. And my goal was to wholesale this deal. Right. So I didn't necessarily tell them that, but that was the goal, is that we were going to wholesale it. And the attorney said, we want a personal guarantee. Okay. Which kind of defeats the purpose of why we're doing some creative finance, is most of the time there is no personal guarantee. Now,
and just for the listeners, what's exactly a personal guarantee?
Personal guarantee means that if I was to default on this loan, that not only can they come after the property, they can come after me for anything else that they may claim to be where they're deficient, but that they were not able to get back all the value. And on stuff like this, the goal really is more about the asset than, and keep in mind, and I told the attorney this, I'm like, the $1 million isn't enough insurance that you basically selling a brand new property and we're giving you $1 million. Why isn't that enough? And he said, all right, this is what we'll do. We'll waive the personal guarantee, but we want $2 million down payment. And I said, absolutely not. And so it blew up the whole deal at the last minute. Okay. And I went back to the broker. There was a broker involved. And I said to the broker, we're going to be talking about this property again in 3 or 4 months, because you're not going to sell it. And the offer I just made you was the best offer you're going to get. Uh, the only way we won't be having this conversation is if you absolutely reduce the price significantly and get the property sold. Well, it wasn't 3 or 4 months, it was like 6. But yep, he's back, and now he's saying that they think they can work around the personal guarantee. And yes, they have lowered the price a little bit, not significantly, but um, that is what was starting to happen in our market, right? That everyone has been asking top dollar, and a lot of them are getting it. And so brokers and sellers alike think that that's what's going to happen. But as the climate changes, as interest rates rise, especially for commercial, you do not have very much. Your buying power is reduced, right? So if you were barely cash flowing at a 3.75% interest rate, now you're going to pay 4.75. You're cash flowing even less, if at all. And so as this starts to really start to resonate with sellers and brokers, you'll start to see some more motivation, either in terms of price reduction or open to creative finance. In the single family world, you might see it depending on the market, but buying power, from what I just read not too long ago, was someone that could afford an $800,000 property in January now can afford about $650,000 property. And so they've lost $150,000 in buying power, which is significant. So the reason I bring this up is that we're talking about, one, no interest, which, actually offering more than what the property is even worth, but getting that rapid principal pay down. And could you imagine, how do I sign a personal guarantee if I'm not even going to be the owner of the property? Right? And I probably could have worked that out. I could have made that a requirement of my buyer, but I didn't want it to be. And to be honest, if you go to the bank and get a $7.5 million or $6.5 million loan, many banks won't require a personal guarantee. Some might, most won't, I think. So, and as you get into those higher price ranges, more and more will not require it. So
I have a question, actually, too, Jeff.
Go ahead.
Just curious, was this like a lead that an apprentice brought?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
Yep.
And then the second question is, since we were talking about notes in the last episode, is there a reason why this property, like, you chose to wholesale versus like doing that whole note?
Yeah, mostly because I'm not really interested in owning properties right now. I'm interested in owning cash flow, and the best way for me to generate cash flow is through notes. Now, if I was to work out a deal this time around, I didn't feel like I could do it the last time, because we're offering more than what the property is worth. And for me to stay in the middle is a little bit risky. I didn't really want to have to raise the $1 million down payment, and I certainly wasn't going to sign the personal guarantee. So this time around, if I'm able to work out again principal only payments, but not have to overpay for the property, now I might consider buying the property and then reselling it on some different terms, right? I'd have to relook at how the numbers will work and see if that could happen. But on something like that, you could generate $2,000, $3,000, $5,000 a month in cash flow. Maybe arbitrage the down payment. I don't know. And then hopefully have a pretty nice back end to the whole thing where If I'm paying principal only and someone's paying me 4.5% interest, mine's paying down much faster than my buyer's loan is. So, but I'm looking at creating passive income through notes, not through assets. So, was there a second question?
That was the second question. I was just curious if apprentice
Oh, you're right.
brought that, because I know you have us call.
Yeah. And I actually think somehow he is the one that followed up. So
nice.
for him. Yep. Yeah. So the reason that I like that deal is that, one, we've had to become really creative, and I could probably do 2 episodes just on the number of offers that have been made on this property, and the different variations of it, trying to find what would be a good fit. Now I feel like the fit is going to be more, there's going to be a little more motivation on the seller side. So it'll be interesting to see what, if anything, can be worked out this time around. Because I'm telling you, based on where they are price wise, that they're still going to, we could have this conversation in 6 more months. So we'll see. But again, we started with that first one where the down payment was way too high. And now you can see I'm more concerned about the down payment on this turnkey type property, because there's no reason to get out of this quickly. And now you want to stay in it as long as possible. I even told our acquisition manager, when you talk to the broker, I want longer than 5 years, because I don't want my buyer having to refinance so soon, not knowing where they're going to be interest rate wise. And so I want 7, 8 years, 10 years, as opposed to 5 from before. So, but just the comparison between the two, one, I feel like, hey, the increased down payment kind of works. Might not be ideal, but it kind of works based on what the goal is. On the more turnkey, doesn't really work. If that was 30%, that would defeat the purpose of the whole deal. So does that make sense?
Yeah, it's helpful to hear what you have going on in your world.
So, all right, well, let's wrap this up. Hopefully you got something out of it, and go out and create some